Thanks for tuning in to As the Tire Turns podcast. Before we dive into this week's episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, AME International. Tire professionals insist on AME. I'd also like to recognize the AACF. For over 65 years, the Automotive Aftermarket Charitable Foundation has stood by those in the automotive aftermarket industry and their families during life's toughest challenges. Since 1959, with the incredible support of industry partners, AACF has provided vital assistance to individuals and families facing financial hardship due to unforeseen circumstances, such as floods, earthquakes, storms, fires, catastrophic medical conditions, life-changing accidents, devastating fatalities, and more. AACF offers a straightforward application process and a quick turnaround time for those needing support during critical moments. Visit www.aftermarketcharity.org to access the application and learn more about how AACF can assist during times of need. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our automotive aftermarket family. Support AACF today. And now, As the Tire Turns. Hi, we are back with another episode of As the Tire Turns, the final episode of As the Tire Turns. Today I'm joined by JC, Riley, Kelsey, Jarman, my daughters. So it was suggested that I be interviewed for this episode by you ladies who all work in the business, right? So you all work for AME as well. And of course, Riley has been behind the scenes for all of them. Almost all, yeah. One I think we roughed it and filmed.
Guest producer,
Mr. Melosi. But anyway, so it was suggested that you interview me for this one. So do we switch places or?
I say without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? I know as the guest, how are you feeling about being on the podcast?
A little nervous. It is a little unsettling. A few people have asked me ahead of time, like, do I need anything to be prepared? And I said, no, didn't give any notes or any tip-offs on questions or anything like that. So I do agree. It is a little unsettling.
Yeah. Now you know what you put everyone else in.
Well, I mean, you do have the benefit of knowing, I mean, we kind of used the previous episodes as a guide for these questions. So you do have the benefit of knowing that there are a couple of softballs that get asked almost every episode.
Maybe.
One of which being, how did you get into the tire industry?
Yeah, that is actually kind of a funny story because I was out with a friend and we were I was working at a grocery store, and long story short,
Why not
We're
the
here for the long story. Come on, never stopped you before.
Anyway, went out to a house party, I guess. It was at a duplex. And the people who were hosting the party, whose names I don't even remember, a couple of girls, they invited their neighbor. And the neighbor I recognized from the grocery store. And so we just started chatting it up and kind of, had some things in common. And then I'd see him more frequently in the grocery store coming through my checkout line.
Those regulars.
Yeah. Regular, exactly. So anyway, he eventually said, hey, this company I work for is hiring. Would you be interested? And I was like, I don't know. What is it? I was a full-time college student and had no aspirations of really anything at that point other than just, having a good time. And so anyway, I took a job in February 93 in the warehouse, working in the warehouse. It was a department of one for Esco, or Equipment Supply Company. And it was the person who was going through the line was Mike and Shirley Jordan's son-in-law. So Tom Jackson was his name. So he was the guy who I befriended. And then he soon left the company. And I was at my trade show in 2 months, and the old retreading show, American Retreading Association, and demonstrating tire changing tools. And so I don't know if that would have been the what got me hooked or not, but I thought it was pretty cool. Remember Richard Petty's? They were used in the transport vehicles. They used Equal, which was a brand new product at the time. So IMI had like the Richard Petty stock car in the booth, and I was like, wow, look at this. I was literally 19 years old.
Yeah,
So
whole new world.
Yeah. Anyway.
So with that being your intro to the industry, what would you say has been like a wow moment within your career? So I know that was pretty special when you first got in. It was new to you. But looking back now, you've been in the industry for what, over 30 years at this point?
Yeah. 31 years, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, right? So I think some of the international travel, right? Traveling some of the far corners of the world, certainly what prompted the passion, I guess, or the desire to do this podcast, which is me being serving as president for the Tire Industry Association. So it's a, that's a big honor to be recognized by the members to get elected to the board, and then from within the board be elected to lead and represent. So I think those are definitely some honors. I've spoken a few times at off the road conferences, and so just I think even sometimes it's not recognition or something from someone, just some of the people that reach out to you and call you for advice and so on, I think are some of the highlights, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. You mentioned Tia, which is the reason we started this podcast, was to kind of document your journey through your years Tia president. But I want to hear about how you kind of got introduced to Tia. What was your introduction to the organization? What has your journey been like? If you could just talk about that.
Yeah. So probably even before Tia. I mean, Tia's been there. We again, going back to my years at Esco, we worked with Tia from the early years when Kevin Rowling was hired and brought in, did a training program. Mike Jordan, who was my mentor and led Esco, we ran at the guy. Shout out in honor of Kevin. Shout out to Vinny Stellato. We had Vinny Stellato go through one of the early training programs in Louisville and where Godfather's is not a pizza place, but little inside joke there. Sorry. Maybe
went over our head.
Maybe that could spread. Anyway, that was a risky one. But anyway, so nonetheless, So I mean, we were active, right? The training program at that point was definitely geared towards the technicians, and it was a not that it's not now, but the point is it was clinical, right? It was in a classroom and so on. But so anyway, so we had input, but then I really through Trib, and we didn't necessarily have any direct relationship with retreaders or the retreading industry, other than the people who used our tools were very active in retreading, and it was a big part of their business. And so got to know Harvey Brodsky, and he was kind of a tireless advocate for retreading and a lot of the bad press that it would get and assumptions that it would get. And so anyway, so I went to a few functions that he would, kind of, as he would always talk about, he had this scrap piece of tire, right, that you'd see on the highway that everybody just assumes is coming from a retreaded tire, and that he'd tell his story that it was from a virgin, right, or a tire that had never been retreaded. And so at one of those met Mike Barra from Community Retreading, Community Tire Retreading, Community Retreading,
Community Tire Retreading,
something like that. Anyway. St. Louis, Mike Barra from St. Louis.
There we go.
And so Mike, well, only because his uncle, I think, had like Community Wholesale, so Community Tire Wholesale. Anyway, Mike Barra. and then he was moving through the ranks, I think, on the executive board, and he had, saw that I traveled a little bit internationally and brought maybe a different perspective. And so he approached me at one of the actually shows over in Europe and said, hey, would you be interested? And then in turn, he recommended me for a board, and I was elected in 2009, I believe that was, and started serving and went to my first summer board meeting in 2010. And so anyway, rest is somewhat history, but yeah. So yeah, that's how I got introduced to the board of directors. But then we were always seeing what we could do to help, with the training. And then as Earth Mover became, that was an area that we had specialized in. And so as the Earth Mover training became more popular and they started taking it to the technicians, then that's really where I kind of jumped in with both feet, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So I will say one of the things that we may have glossed over at the beginning of this, we asked how you got in the industry. We've talked a little bit about TIA, but one of the main reasons you're here and one of the main reasons you're on the board at TIA and you're the president of TIA is because you're also the president of AME. So do you want to give some background history, how you started, the people that you started it with, and just, give us a rundown of what the last...
Yeah, so actually in a perfect world, right, we had, I had kind of sketched out, and I don't have it with me because I don't need it for questions, but had sketched out a list of maybe who potentially would be episodes for this. And so the founders, I thought, would be maybe one of the latter episodes. So we've... that didn't happen. There's a handful of people didn't happen. Jeff Young, Steve Zimmerman.
We got the season 2
Hey,
though.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know about that, but anyway. So, but yeah. So 2006, I've been trying to purchase Esco for some time, and it just became obvious to me that it wasn't really maybe going to happen, and for whatever reason. And so I became frustrated, and just a couple of things happened. Anyway, 2007, I took a leap of faith and started the business. So I started with 3 partners who, at the beginning of the series, were all still together. One has since moved on, still works in the industry though. But anyway, so and that's Tim Benoist, who is VP of Finance, and then both Brett Wagner and Louis Goyeneche in a sales role. But yeah, so anyway, so we started from next to nothing and scraped together,
Listen, I remember the meetings on the back porch, just peeking out. You guys are out there. We got a lot of good stories about the beginnings of AME.
Yeah,
The early days.
for sure. Almost burning the house down one time.
Exactly.
Not really understanding oven fires, but anyway.
Shout out Hernando County Fire Department.
Yes, but yeah. So anyway, we started 2007 and really didn't look back. But yeah.
So we kind of hit a milestone this year, 50 employees.
Yeah.
When you first started, did you ever think that we were going to get to this point?
Probably not, right? We hit my last full year, right, at Esco was around $6 million, and we were 20 some employees, and so that's kind of what you think, right? I mean, I'd done that for 14 years at that point. The company was I think founded maybe in the 80s, so it was probably 23, 24 years old or so, and so you just tend to think of it. And the business, right, that we participated in, or the part of the industry, it's somewhat limited and captive. So anyway, but we blew past those numbers and the employees, and in 2015 partnered with or sold really the business to the group of guys that at the time owned half of Haltech, right? So now they own 100%. But anyway, so that was I mean, it's been a good partnership and working close together with them. But yeah, 50 employees, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of payroll. But we're good, right? I mean, our business has grown. We've actually sold in 7 continents, right? Which, it's tough to say. I'd love to say that we handled the Antarctica directly. We didn't, but we got a shipment to it, put little care packages and notes in it, trying to get maybe like, hey, will you email us some of the pictures in use, right? Just always trying to market and think, anyone can say they sell on 6 continents, but 7 continents, that's worldwide.
It's still impressive to say that you've got your tools on 7 continents.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Of those 50 employees, a significant portion of those employees are made up by family members.
Yep.
Is that something that's important to you in the company culture, and is that something that you value, is those relationships?
Well, this could go a bunch of different ways, but yeah, no, we do have.
That's what you said.
Exactly, yeah. No, I think sometimes maybe even to a fault, right? That we do operate. We operate the business, and it has to be family first. Somebody told me early on a couple of things. One, I'll say Hank Hawley, who was a Schrader employee and the rep for Haltech in years later, and I got to know him, and he would comment and say, Keith, this is young, right? And we were first having kids. And so he would say, I see a lot of these events, and I'm telling you, man, it goes by quick, right? And just make the most of it, and so on. So I did take that to that advice, and we've always, I think, realized that probably nobody on their deathbed is going to say, oh, I wish I would have put one more Saturday in the office, or something like that, right? So it tends to be more family. I think that's just part of growing up, and right, I'm in my 50s now, and so you just, what was a priority in your 20s, right, changes and evolves, and that's all you can think about, and your motivation and everything. And then in your 30s, right, changes again, and then your 40s, and you're like, okay, I got this, right. And it just, I don't know if it's necessarily set by decades, but it definitely changes. So family's always important. We realize that while people are passionate about the work and might love what they do, right, it's something typically at home that is that true fire that they've got. So I'm proud that a number of people have recommended other family members to come to work. It can obviously cause problems if people use the analogy sometimes of a business, right, being like a family, and I think probably on LinkedIn saw a comparison, and I think probably a better analogy is a team. And because you definitely have to pull each other up and so on. But the fact of the matter is you can get cut, right, on a team or benched and so on. And so sometimes a little tougher to do that with family. But in my experience, most people don't recommend someone unless they, believe. And in some cases, like, where a family member will reach out, somebody might say, oh, that's on you, right? And so on. So anyway, I'm proud, in particular of you ladies, and having traveled to some of the different functions and supported you. You've certainly got to know a handful of people, and so I get lots of good feedback. I don't think it's patronizing, right? I feel like it's sincere. So anyway, but I think across our whole company, and part of our culture is somewhat of a family first, and I say play hard, work hard, right, and so on. So I think we embody that.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned some industry events. What's your favorite one that you've attended?
I mean, in particular, I don't know if I know the specific like location or whatever, but the Off the Road conference for me, which is held traditionally each February, is by far, right, one of the best events that I do each year. Over time, right, 30 years, you develop a lot of friendships, right? You have work relationships, but those work relationships become friendships, and so even SEMA show, it's grueling, right? But we're very fortunate. We will entertain and have nice dinners and stuff. But it's exhausting, right? You come out of that show just right, needing 2 or 3 days of rest to recuperate and so on. And so, but you meet a lot of friends and you see a lot of friends, and sometimes it's only at these events that you see it. So OTR conference for sure is a fantastic event, and it's usually held at kind of smaller, not small, but properties where the conference takes over most of the facility. So it's good. But those are them, and then the Reifen show in Germany was always a favorite of mine. But I've been to shows in India. I've been met with customers and mine sites in Africa and Australia. I mean, every part of it has a good piece of it. The travel getting there isn't always fun, but yeah. I mean, I just think seeing different corners of the world. A little kid from Spring Hill, Florida, I guess. I'm in Brooksville, Florida now, but yeah.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite places that you've traveled?
Two?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess a lot of the international, right? I don't know if one in particular. I mean, Japan's very different, and I've enjoyed that. India was interesting. See the culture and so on. Africa, right? South Africa, great people, and Australia. Obviously, the language, helps to be able to communicate. But even in the countries where you have a tough time, Latin America, right? I've been to Colombia and Chile, Peru, Brazil. I think if I had to nail one, I don't know. I mean, Sydney, Australia, right? Staying downtown and being able to see the Harbor Bridge and the Opera House, like some iconic, places that are known worldwide, is cool. But I don't know. Sorry, there's a lot.
No, I mean,
You've been a lot of places.
You've been a lot of places. I think, like what you said, one of the nice things about this industry, it's very small. You become friends with competitors. You become friends with your vendors. You become friends with your customers. The relationship there's of quality, definitely, not just quantity, which is nice.
Yep.
And I know that with you traveling, I mean, there's some situations where you're staying at people's homes with them, and I know that that's been a thing where we've invited people to have dinner. And I mean, even when we were younger, like we spent time as kids with people that you've developed friendships with over the years. Not only the friendships side of things, you've come across a lot of people I know personally, just as your daughter and as one of your employees, that you typically talk about a lot of the different people who've kind of inspired you, influenced you. Who would you say are some of the most influential people that you've met? I would say not only that have impacted your career, because I know there's going to be a handful within the industry, but I also know there are a handful outside of the industry as well that you refer to on a pretty frequent basis.
MJ, right? Mike Jordan, first guy that I work with, certainly made an impact for me. Taught me a lot and kind of took me under his wing, and so we had a lot of good years. We had some that weren't so great, right? We ended up litigation against one another, and that happens. But I actually saw him this past summer, and still has a death grip handshake. And so, that's been good. Personally, right? It's Dave Caruso's, been a very good friend, but also someone that wanted to emulate early on, just kind of his commitment to the customer and so on. But I mean, there's really been a ton of people inside and out. Your mother, I don't know if I can say that, your mama, but Kelly, right? Trying to juggle raising kids, and then in 2007 starting a business and so on. That's she's definitely been there. It's the old saying, behind every successful, right? Man, there's a strong woman or something like that. I don't know what the saying is, but nonetheless, right? That's definitely been good. Carlos Zuniga. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
When you just said your mom, I was gonna be like, Chris.
Take
should have
notes.
started that answer.
That was a little
Shout out
homage to.
Kathy.
Go back to episode 9 of As the Tire Turns.
There you go.
No, but I can relate to Chris, right? We're joking about, but Chris Brothan's been there for me, right? You know, past several years and so on. So I mean, employees. Yeah, I mean, you know, we just lost my Vistage chairman, a peer group, right? Vistage, Russ Van Zandt, right? I can't tell you, even, you know, and he was in his 80s, and as he said, you know, had failed retirement a couple of times, and you know, so still stayed in it, and just there's times that I, you know, wish I could reach out to Russ, right? You know, and yeah, so I mean, it's been good. There's customers, there's vendors. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of the people that I've interviewed on this podcast, right? You know, I'd consider in that inner circle and so on. So, yeah. I don't know if that's what you're looking for or not, but
No, you definitely.
that's what you got.
Yeah, no, you covered a few. Actually, I'm gonna strong arm you and make you give me a whole list. No,
Yeah. Rank them.
yeah. Get like MySpace. You gotta go ahead.
Your top 8.
Put it out here on the podcast. They're all gonna know. So I know we've talked a lot about the tire industry. If you weren't in the industry, what would you be doing?
No idea.
Not even a wild guess.
I mean, I really don't know, right? My guess is I was going to school to become a physical therapist, right? So I have a brother-in-law now who works in physical therapy. And, yeah, I don't know if I would have done that or not. So I'd like to think something entrepreneurial or you know, finding a whatever, just better mousetrap and improving something. But I really don't know.
Do you have a favorite memory from the industry?
From the industry?
Yeah, from your time in the industry.
You know, I mean, some of the icons, right? You know, like meeting Bruce, I don't even know how you say it, Halley, from founder of Discount Tire, right? So he was given a Hall of Fame award, right? And so met him several years ago in my early days, calling on Les Schwab in Prineville, Oregon, and going into the country club where I guess maybe he ate every day, I don't know, and just being, you know, there with a couple of the guys, and you just, like, the room got quiet, right? And I'm like, what's that? And then, you know, in comes this, you know, not caricature, right? But, you know, guy with the cowboy hat, you know, and someone that you'd seen and just kind of, you know, didn't even meet him, but just kind of being in the presence, right? You know,
Man
of him.
behind the myth.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I mean, there's, you know, I'm very fortunate. It's been a lifetime of good memories, and yeah. So
I'm gonna throw one in there that I think you may have overlooked. Last year at the OTR conference, I know you're a big fan of this movie growing up.
Yeah.
We watched it a few times. You got to meet the man behind the movie, Rudy.
Yeah, Rudiger Rediger. Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And when it came out that he was the speaker, we had shared kind of some MC duties, and I may be breaking Kevin's shout-out record. I give a shout-out to Russ Devins because he was scheduled to introduce Rudy and introduce on the speakers. And I don't remember if we flipped that whole day or if we just flipped, but got to meet him kind of on the break ahead of time, and just kind of a classic, iconic speaker. I thought it was hilarious, right? He had everybody stand up, and at the end of the event, and, you know, I forget what it was or something, but, you know, gave an applause, and he says, now when, you know, I get done and they'll say how'd it go, and I'll say standing ovation, right? You know.
Yeah, no, he was
true. But yeah, it was very educational, and there's been a handful of those people that, right, you know, that you've met, and yeah, so very cool.
just surreal. You don't think you'd meet someone like that at a work event, you know?
Correct.
So it's nice to
Correct.
have the opportunity.
Even travel, right? You know, I was I don't know if it was a creeper shot or not, right? But I always carried my camera even before the cell phones, right? Had snapshot camera, and I can't tell you how many times, you just flying and traveling, you would see people. So yeah.
This next question might cause a little controversy.
Oh.
What does AME stand for?
I feel like this is a question we get all the time.
Yeah.
Like, not only growing up, but from people who buy from AME too. They're like, just curious. They see the periods after each letter and they're like, what does it mean?
There's actually no periods after.
Are you kidding?
No, there's not.
The Mandela effect?
This is your Mandela effect. There's not periods. I didn't know.
Really?
No, it's no, because that's part
You
of
know
always.
what? I'm thinking of the
the-
bolts
the-
on
the-
the other
the-
side.
Yeah,
on the
there's
logo.
there's a bolt or a bullet on either side of it, but no actual.
That's my
Yeah.
bad. That was some.
Yeah, so the answer is really means nothing in the sense, but then inevitably somebody would say, why AME? And there is a story behind that. Probably didn't tell anyone for 5-6 years, but the long and short of it is, I told you a little bit that I was becoming disgruntled or disenfranchised, right? Thought I was on a path to purchase the business. The owners had, my opinion, said that they were going to sell the business, right? Price was changing, and the accountant kind of looked at me and said, it's not for sale. It's not that difficult, right? It takes a willing buyer, willing seller. So I wasn't sure what to do, and I was at an event and had a supplier tell me, like, Keith, you know everybody, right? And people trust you, and there's an Asian supplier. And so he said, why don't you do business? And basically just, people want to import from China, but they don't trust the Chinese factories. They don't know who's a factory versus a trading company. And he says, if you could vouch, right, people trust and believe you, and then, you could maybe broker some sales and so on. I didn't think much about it, but then no sooner did that happen than we had a customer who, one of their big businesses was automotive garage lifts, and they had two different suppliers, a U.S. one and an Italian one, the Italian being the lesser expensive. This is around the time where, like, the euro was coming on board, right? They didn't have the Italian currencies anymore, and so that started gaining strength. And so the Italian lifts were getting to be as expensive as the American lifts. So this company was looking for an import from Asia. And so they went out to Automechanica, I think, and were looking to see maybe, if they could do that. Anyway, they reached out to me, and I thought, well, maybe we'll do something. So this is the spirit of much debate and depositions and so on. But we weren't in the lift business at Esco, and so I took a leap of faith, and so I said, well, let me just try and broker some of these sales. Well, they said, we'll take it. Well, I didn't have anything set up. So the company in Asia had sent me a Excel spreadsheet that I just kind of changed pricing and forwarded it over. And in the corner, it had AME on it. And so I set up it's also the reason why our legal name's always been AME Trading, was I set up a trading company with no ambitions to have that be the business or anything. And so the whole concept for this brokering was that, it could make for people around the globe easy to do business in Asia. So a friend of mine, the founder, his business idea was Asia made easy, and so
AME was born.
So I had AME Trading set up, figuring, I'll broker a little bit of this and that, and get into the import-export business, I guess. And so fast forward, and the writing's on the wall, and I know I'm going to leave. I meet with an attorney saying, is there anything could stop me? And he says, no, but do it, sooner than later. Don't download this. Don't take any customers. Don't. And so I said, well, I got to make a clean thing. So we did it, and we had a couple people reach out immediately, and I'm like, well, okay. boy, trying to come up with a name of a company is difficult, right? You think iconic names and it makes perfect sense now, but so anyway, we sat around trying to come up and brainstorm, and at the end of the day, it boiled down to I'd already had a checking account open with this name, and I said, well, why don't we just use that? It's already done. It ticks something off the list. Won't have to do it. And so we just started AME, and then obviously filed a DBA, or doing business as international, right, to reflect that, and then started working with some of our manufacturers to produce tools and stuff like that domestically. But anyway, so that is the story behind
the legend behind the name.
AME. Yeah, it's funny because I think Group 31, same thing. Like the guy was like maybe 29 years old. If we'll get this story from Bob,
there you go.
potentially next season, maybe. Anyway, but I think like 29 Incorporated was taken, and so 30, and then he just kind of went up the ladder, right, until there was one that was available. So.
Now everyone knows Group 31.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway.
Do you have any current goals right now?
I mean, just really try and one thing that I've learned through some of the speakers that we'll get on trying to work on the business instead of work in the business is the more valuable a company are the ones who can basically have redundancies and where the CEO or the leaders aren't married to the business, right, where that they've built in replacements and so on. So I mean, frankly, it's to not make me obsolete, but really to make sure that the next generation is prepared, right? So, or the next group of leadership and so on. So I mean, that's kind of a shorter, I guess that's really a long-term goal, but no, that's just keep. We've always been built on growth, and so keep
trucking along.
Keep trucking along, building, growing, exactly.
This kind of feeds off that answer, but I guess what's next? You got any big plans? Your presidency is going to be over.
It's over, I think, the day that this is going to drop, in theory, right? So, no, I think, when you, it's a high and a low when you get elected as to the executive board, right? You get elected secretary, and then you just will rise through to VP and then president, and then you're still on the executive board for 1 year as past president, and then you fall off the board. But that's okay, right? It's time for the next generation, new leaders to come in. So no, I think continue to look for opportunities to help and to grow. There's just a ton of great people that we've met in the industry, and just I think continue to try and advance the industry as a whole. It's one of the last episodes which had just aired, right? We're the two guys that started the OTR Tire Guys Forum, and right, I mean, it's just they're called out and great salt of the earth people, but the fact of the matter is people like them all over, right? Just good, hardworking, people. So continue to advocate for the employees, the business owners, get them to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
I saw a post this morning on social media where Bubba, aka or Barton Smith, but he was commenting. He went out and bought donuts, right? At a shop because somebody was blasting this donut shop for having high prices, right? And it's not a chain; it's a small one-off, and that was he says, hey, I know what it's like out there, right? To compete and to have to provide and so on. So he went out and ordered look like some tasty donuts. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that, right? So try and advocate for business owners, right, to charge reasonable pricing and put value in what service that they provide, and so on. So yeah, anyway, I'm gonna get all make me sound like I'm on a soapbox now.
No. Well,
With that, I'd say, is there anything else you want to address?
No, I just you were asking a question there, and it made me think of we just lost a
good friend and an industry veteran.
yeah, Ace, and I was just looking through a bunch of old pictures and stuff, trying to compile for his wife and family, and it's been a really good run. But just even seeing some videos from you kids, like in your youth, I mean, not even in school and stuff like that, and different events and travel and stuff like that. So anyway, industry's been very, very good. I'm very fortunate to have a great family, support what I do, and have met a lot of people. And unfortunately, as they like to say, Father Time is undefeated, I think, or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So the reality is that people that I've known over the past 30 years, right, some of them are passing and so on. So I think that's it, right? Life is short, and make the most of it. And no, if I were in high school, I probably had ambitions of me, being a star on a basketball court somewhere, and would not have selected the tire industry. But I think there's a reason that people don't leave. It really is a good industry, and again, just very fortunate to be able to work and have been surrounded by just a really lot of top people. So it is a pleasure to work each day and to interact with a lot of people that I interact with. So very, very fortunate. And then get to come home. Of course, you guys aren't all at home now anymore, but when I do get to see you, it's a privilege. So it's been a good run, and we'll keep continuing as long as people find value, I guess. So anyway.
Well, I just want to go ahead and add in too. I mean, we've been, I always talk about how I love a good underdog story, and yours is definitely one of my favorites. So I'm not only happy to be here and interviewing you, but a proud daughter, proud employee. Definitely happy to tell people when I say I work for AME. So yeah, no, this has been a pleasure on both our parts. We're getting all emotional.
I know. Cue Barbara Walters or something.
I know.
Anyway.
I think she said it best. Thank you for letting us be on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh,
thank you for letting us switch it up on you.
Yeah.
And ask you the questions this time. But I'll let you close out season 1.
There we go.
Yes.
So it has been an absolute pleasure if you've listened or watched. I really appreciate it, and hope it's been educational, a little bit of fun. Anyway, thank you so much. That's all for As the Tire Turns.
Oh,
All right. Thank you sincerely for listening to As the Tire Turns podcast.